Hello and welcome to the CNBC TV18 special CEO dialogue. We're coming to you from London in partnership with the UKIBC and KPMG. It is our privilege to have with us some of the leading lights of both India and the UK to talk about the economic and business agenda. There's been a lot of talk about potential. There's been a lot of talk about promise. Prime Minister Cameron says we need to be partners in prosperity. Prime Minister Modi has said that the UK needs to actively participate in developing India's many programs, whether it's Make in India or Smart Cities. But what is all of that going to actually translate into in terms of foreign direct investment? What is that going to mean in terms of job creation on either side? What is it going to mean in terms of being able to really up bilateral trade, which has sort of paled in comparison to what we've seen UK do with other trading partners and India do with other trading partners as well. I have with me a very, very special star cast here joining us in London at the KPMG Private Members Club. Stephen Ward, let me ask you this. You have significant operations in India. Let's talk about the road ahead and let's talk about what would you like to see so that you could actually up your investment in India. The promise and potential is immense. What is it that you expect in terms of future action to reaffirm your faith and commitment?
Now, we've invested significant sums over the last 15 years. We employ about 25,000 people in India. We want to employ an awful lot more. In our security, we have a facilities management business covering security, housekeeping, engineering, hygiene and so on. And within security, we're limited to 49%, which as a private business, it's a big call to invest a lot more into India.
Unless you don't have majority
control. Yeah. Precisely. This is one area that we would like some help, and we certainly want to invest more money into the country to start developing things further.
Okay. That's one sector where we continue to see the cap. And Sanjay, let me ask you, there's FDI in print media. While broadcast has finally been opened up, FDI in print media continues to be at 26%. In terms of further liberalization on both sides, on the back of the feedback that you get from clients, what more needs to be done to be able to attract the kind of money that we're talking about?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things. You can focus on particular sectors and FDIs in particular sectors. I think it goes back to a more fundamental point, which is, sorry to keep echoing the point, it's the ease of doing business. So when you think about the FDI that people talk about, just having, large organizations, large groups who can afford to deal with the challenges of working in India. If the large groups continue to invest in India, it's one thing. But until you get, SMEs investing in India, people aren't going to get the confidence that they need. So one thing that's interesting is when you look at a lot has been made about the 44% increase in FDI between UK and India. What that tells me is when you scratch beneath the surface, what that tells me is those groups that know India and love India continue to love India. They're investing more. But what you don't get is the breadth of new organizations investing in India.
The digital economy is going to change that. So when you look at digital natives in India, it's about 250 million. So it's the same size as the US, but it's 1/5 of the market. We know, you look at Snapdeal, you look at Flipkart, you look at Sonsan, what he's doing with Nikesh Arora in terms of building effectively trying to build another Alibaba, but based in India. You look at, Xiaomi coming into the market and Micromax competing very effectively, handsets being, I think to your point about SMEs or entrepreneurship, what you're going to see, and there's some other very sensitive issues, gender equality, right? Increasing gender equality, which will come in time, it unleashes the other half of the population, and the intellectual content there is very powerful. And I think that point is going to be demolished in time, in fairly quick time, actually.
I think the interesting.
All right,
The interesting point about the SME though is, and this goes back to something that a lot of people said earlier, is that groups in the UK can come up with reasons for not investing in India. You can come up with 1,000 reasons. You can talk about red tape. You can talk about all of these things. But the simple point is that if you look forward for the next 4 or 5 years, if you're not investing in India, you are looking at benign growth in the European market. So what alternative is there? Now, I think that the more that groups invest in India, and I don't mean the Vodafones or the Vedantas, I'm talking about the SMEs, the more pioneering they are and the more they enter the market, they can then inform how regulation evolves. So I think if people are waiting for the Indian authorities to roll out the red carpet and create the perfect regulatory environment, they'll wait a very long time. But you have more to gain by being in the game
Than being outside. Yes.
So, Shereen, I think there's one fundamental change that is happening which we are missing here right now. What you're getting is this competitive federalism which our Prime Minister has set out actually beginning to work. The states are moving forward, not just coming here inviting investment. They're coming here to tell people that business is a lot easier down at the state level. And I think that's where the ease of business is really going to matter. How our states reach out for investment and how they respond to this so-called one-window clearance, which finally begins to take place. And I just want to also mention the huge opportunity which is in the resources space, but not just as we've talked about in commodities, but water. A huge program for rivers, huge program for river transportation, huge programs for sanitation. And these are spaces which UK companies must begin to look at. The Indian urban sanitation environment, the supply chains therein. And a third thing I'd like to mention is when we talk of SMEs, and I think it is very important, is how do we get global supply chains that are part of this? It's not going to happen easily, SME to SME.
No, and especially if you're doing Make in India.
That is already happening. Look, I think the critical point, if I may, about this visit is the success of Mr. Modi's visit, the discussions that have been had, and the publicity right across the United Kingdom means that a lot of businesses, particularly those smaller businesses, that in the past have simply said India's too difficult or have had a bad experience and burnt their fingers, they will now be looking at India again. And all of us, Indian investors in Britain, British organisations like my own, Friends of India, we will be out there banging the drum for India and telling British business now is the time to be there.
Simon and David, let me get you to jump in on this. And Simon, let me start by asking you, you've had the chance of listening in to what people have to say on what needs to be done on both sides. The topmost priorities that need to be addressed, both on the Indian side as well as on the UK side, to really start to move on the numbers. I mean, we've been aspiring to grow bilateral trade between these two nations now, for the last decade, and we haven't been able to achieve that.
What it really struck me was the fact that the Prime Minister stood up and said, we are on the edge of a technology revolution. That was fantastic. And he made it absolutely clear in a way I hadn't heard before, how open India is to international investors. And then we announced some deals. Who talked about deals have been announced? Let's have a look at the sectors behind those deals. They were in healthcare, they were in technology, they were in renewables, they were in energy, renewable energy in particular, and some of that green financing that Nana was talking about earlier on. These are really exciting. So in order to achieve that transformation that you ask about, we're breaking out into new sectors, we're bringing the supply chains in, we're looking at the new, innovative, exciting young technologies. And I think that's why Britain will stay at the top of the investor list as we go through the next 15 years, as we have done for the last 15 years.
Okay, that's good to hear. David.
Shereen, thank you. The dialogue and the energy that's going into this debate is phenomenal, and I think the fact that both sides are on the same page is clearly encouraging and means things are going to happen. My sense is that Sir Martin and Sanjay got to the point. The SMEs in the UK need to work harder now to take the risk to invest in India today. They can't wait until India gets to 50 on the ease of business, doing business. They need to start today.
Why is that the case? Why is Germany, Holland, in India and the UK is not?
I'll tell you why it is. Because they're hungrier for the business. I think the English still feel they have a divine right to do business in India, and they don't. They have to work hard to win it. And I think we can sit here talking around a table for years to come, but actually the SMEs need to take the bull by the horns and take the risk. And we can see the direction of travel. It's going in the right way. But they're never going to be able to tick every box. They've got to take the bull by the horns, and that will reap the benefit for them, and they'll beat the competition to the market.
The Chinese head of state and the US head of state visited Prime Minister Modi in India in the first year. That tells you a lot about the priority that they place on India and Indian development.
We're still asleep at the wheel here. I mean, I think there's a lot of energy and effort coming at the top, but But we need a minister of execution. Someone,
Minister of Execution.
someone to push us into the right.
Analjeet Singh, you made that comment as well yesterday, didn't you? That we need a Ministry of Approvals or a Department of Approvals.
Absolutely, because that seems to be where the bear bug is. And the fact is, we are complicated, things are getting better. And if we have a Department of Approvals which is empowered, and I mean seriously empowered, but for the constitutional remit, the likes of the Chief Election Commissioner and people like that have, and use as a surrogate a group of ministers, which could be a set 2 or 3, which meet every fortnight for select cases, and then a minister of the concerned ministry, the ministry involved, and we get a stamp of approval. The job is done, because there are multifarious agencies. There are multifarious agencies everywhere, you know. But and we are a growing country, and so on and so forth. So that's how it's to be put together.